Thank you very much for choosing Spice FM this morning. 94.4 in Nairobi. In Mombasa, we are on 87.9. Kisumu, 102.5. 96.0 in Nakuru. 96.7 in Eldoret. 90.9 in Nyeri. Malindi, 97.7. And www.spicefm.co.ke. YouTube, Facebook and Twitter, as well is Spice FM KE. For the next 2 hours, we are also live on KTN Home. A very good morning to your audience on KTN Home. Let's start with today's proverb, CT.
Well, Eric. The day a mosquito lands on your testicles is the day you will know that there is a better way of resolving issues without violence. This is a Senegalese saying.
That's the day.
That's the
First
day
with the options.
Yes.
Looking at all the options before you,
Yes.
that's the day you will realize that.
Do you wave the mosquito away? Do you slap it?
Do you have dialogue mosquito?
With the mosquito?
Or do you get a hammer? This is a big one. This is a big one. So let's talk about the Buxton project, CT. Buxton is one of the very many other urban renewal projects.
Yes, it is.
And this has happened already in Nairobi. We've seen a couple of projects. Pangani is
And
already
Jivanji Bachelors.
up and running.
And not only up and running, but the president actually officiated the groundbreaking ceremonies of both estates. Yes. But the understanding and the thinking behind the urban renewal project was that old, mostly dilapidated estates that previously were owned by the councils, the municipalities, now currently under the stewardship of the counties, would actually be built anew. Now, this was a unique project in that it was what you call I'm never sure it's the public or the private comes first, but public-private partnership.
Private.
Yes, and
Public-private.
Public-private. Public comes first, yes, because it's the public who own the land.
Yep.
Yeah.
It involved the national government underwriting it. Yes, the land is within the county. Yes, it is county land, but the national government. And this just didn't involve the ministry that deals with lands and housing, but it also involved even the Ministry of Finance. For all this to take place so that you can have an understanding that can be documented that takes care of the interest of the developer, the interest of the county, and more importantly, the interest of the tenants. And why the tenants? Because when you talk about tenants in a housing scheme of this nature, you're talking about people who aren't your ordinary tenant. So even the relationship that we speak of that a tenant has with the landlord is not ordinary. These are houses whose ownerships, occupation, really not ownership, one could say is generational. So just like people talk about rural areas, some of these urban dwellings represent what you may call the rural dwelling. Here, I'm actually taking the liberty of the language within an urban setting. So there are people who were born there. The ecosystem within these estates are the same ecosystem you'd find in what we refer to as a village. People who've known each other for years, they know their parents, some even know their grandparents. So the social element of the housing had to come in, and the consideration, not just the aspect of rebuilding, but also ensuring that those who live there benefit from it by ending up owning the property.
Yep.
Yes, at least a property that is not just the equivalent, better than what they lived in before. This, in a nutshell, was the thinking behind it.
And another big thing about it is that you're looking at vast pieces of land
Yes.
in these areas, and you're looking at the demand for housing.
Yes.
And you're seeing that you have this piece of land and you need to meet demand.
Yes.
So instead of thinking of, going to put up new houses in Kapiti Plains, for example, in the case of Nairobi, look at these same old estates. How can we rejig these estates, put up new houses, so you still have the same community that was living there, still living there, and then more people can come and occupy the areas?
Actually, when you think of what we refer to as urban drift, where people actually move to urban areas to seek better livelihood, if there's one place where people have problems of housing, it's in the urban areas. So this is something the government recognized, but the government also recognized at that point in time to actually achieve this, they didn't have the wherewithal to. And that's where now the private participation comes in.
Yeah.
That's where the private developers come in to assist with this. And then, of course, when the plan for the 4 major, huge agendas came in and was brought in by the president, it fell right into the ambit of this plan. The truth of the matter is, when you think about it, it is a grand plan. And it is one of these things that occur very once in a lifetime, because in the past, the government, through the National Housing, used to put up houses of this nature, and you find them all over the country in some of the major towns. But the option of ownership on this scale is something that is new.
It's new.
Yes, and it's the people who are involved, the private investors, are actually charting a completely new path that had hitherto not been charted. Yes. And so, because it is new, it will come with issues that had never been dealt with before.
So we'll be dealing with issues as they emerge.
Yes, but even more interestingly, if you are a developer right now and you're talking about a county, you'll not just be inheriting the land, but you'll be inheriting the problems that the tenants have had with their previous landlord, the municipality.
The municipalities.
Oh yes, you will, and it'll be often the center stage of the discussions.
Let's focus our conversation today to Mombasa. And Mombasa, in the Urban Renewal Project, we have a number of housing estates that are earmarked for this facelift and uplifting. Buxton is one of them. The other estates include Khadija Estate, Miritini, Greenfield Changamwe Estate, Chuda, Mzizima, Likoni Estates, that's Likoni Flats and Likoni Customs, Nyeri Estate, Tomboya Estate, Kachonjo, and Kizingo. Redevelopment of these estates is expected to bring in more than 50 billion shillings worth of investments. This is according to the plans by the county government and the national government as well. The one that there were two that now have got into the stage of getting the PPE signed in and the takeoff.
Yes.
Buxton is one of them, and Changamwe is the second.
And also Likoni.
And Likoni as well, right?
They're more or less at the phase where they can actually start. But Buxton seem closer to starting because with the public participation and the engagement of the community has taken place. Should we say it's in full form?
And the PPP developer has already been identified.
Oh, you can't have
coming.
this without the developer being there. But this particular developer was not the first developer. There was a developer who preceded him, and for whatever reason, they were unable to continue with the project. Now, where the problem comes in again, at the time of inception, the talk was it would be 50 billion. This was 5 years ago. So now the cost will have gone up.
For sure.
Yes. So
Let's bring in this developer, and this is the other side of things, because we've seen the kind of pushback that we're seeing from the political leaders in Mombasa, some political leaders, some residents of Mombasa, some activists in Mombasa, and then we're also seeing the welcoming hands that the project is also receiving from some sections of the community in Mombasa. Suleiman Shahbal is a businessman and politician. He's a man who has vied to be governor of Mombasa County twice, and now he is the one, his company has signed up to be the developer of the Buxton project, and now joins us on the line. Good morning, Suleiman.
Morning, Eric. Morning, Muga and Dundu.
Good morning.
I see Muga is sounding extremely sharp this morning.
It's a shirt he's wearing.
Church has contributed.
No, it's not just the shirt. It's the way he's posing these issues in a very astute manner. I'm afraid that we're in for a tough interview this morning.
You may be in for a tough interview this morning, but we want to bring out the issues as they are to ensure that
Exactly.
we get to the very bottom of this. So, Suleiman, your company is the one that is starting to deal with the Buxton Affordable Housing Project. And then we saw the agreements that have been signed with the county government of Mombasa. We've seen reports that there have been engagement with the residents of Buxton. Initially, there were reports that there was pushback and from some residents of Buxton. Where are you now with this?
I think let's start with where Muga talked about this thing. He was talking about there are two components to this whole project. Number one is the economic side, and number two, and perhaps more important, is the social component of this. And I got to admit that my interest in social housing goes back to 2007 or 2008, when I first visited Malaysia, and I saw the Malaysian government is giving, or rather is selling apartments to citizens for the equivalent of 2 million shillings. And I started thinking, if they can do it for 2 million shillings, we should also be able to do the same thing. And then, of course, there is the social implications, because where are we going to develop these? We're going to develop these on the old estates. And the old estates already have tenants. And as Muga said, there is a village element to these estates, that people have grown up together there, they have lived there 40 years. So the idea of a rejuvenation of these estates is, yes, we have to come up with modern houses, we have to come up with affordable housing, and in the development of these estates, we have to make sure that we don't lose that community and communal feeling, which is why when the original proposal for 15 to 20 stories buildings, extreme high concentration, I rejected that, because we would end up losing that whole community feeling and end up creating vertical slums. So this is an idea whose time has come. We have to find a way to do it in an economic and in a humane fashion as much as possible.
This isn't the first time that this has come about. Just looking at Buxton now, Suleiman, and a few years ago when this development was to have started, it seemed like something that you didn't support. What has changed between then and now?
Not correct. In 2013, when I first ran for governor, it was in my manifesto to do this urban rejuvenation. In 2013 and in 2017, and at that point in time, I was very clear about how it should be done. And I was insisting that there are 4 components which are very critically important. Number one, let's not lose sight that this is public land. So it has to be properly tendered. It has to be properly advertised. Number two, the tenants who are there need to be given some relocation allowance. Number three, there has to be public participation. Number four, the county must get something back in return for the land. And number five, I objected to these 15-story vertical slums. So 2015, when the county government wanted to do this, we took them to court, insisting that the proper process has to be followed, which they very smartly did. So when this came up again post the 2017 election, and the county has followed the right process, then I believed that the public interest and the commercial interest were being met fairly, and I thought the opportunity is right for us to push this agenda. So it's not correct that, I opposed it. No, it was in my plans right from the very beginning in 2013, before they even came up with this idea.
So certain things had to be in place in order for it to roll out properly. And do you feel that those things are in place now then for Mombasa to get the kind of facelift that obviously these kind of developments would contribute?
Yes, absolutely. At the end of the day, today we're here, tomorrow, 5-10 years will be gone. And people will ask, how was this thing done? Was this properly done? And one of the major components of any private-public partnership has got to be public participation, where the public will come in and give their point of view. Now, a lot of the politicians have been talking, no proper public participation has been done. But there are three parts to the public participation. Number one, before they were tendered, did the county government do adequate public participation, which is what I had challenged them in the past. And yes, after my challenge, they had gone ahead and done proper public participation, and the court ruled that the county had done the public participation. The next stage that after we won the tender is we now went and did consultation meetings with the committees and with the residents of Buxton, culminating in a huge meeting at Wild Waters, where the governor also attended. That was consultation. And the third stage was public participation, which was properly and adequately advertised as the normal public participation rules. And then we had 3 days of public participation. Every day, at least 500 people attended. What is interesting is that not a single one of those politicians who are criticizing this thing and demanding public participation, not one of them attended. So, there's got to be some honesty to our political discourse and political dialogue and agreement or disagreement on any issue.
Sure.
Public participation was open, and they should have had the courage to come and raise whatever issues they have in front of 500 people over 3 days.
How did you win the tender, Suleiman?
Sorry?
How did you win the tender for this now? I mean, because you must understand also, coming from a public perception, at some point you opposed it for the things that you said, which you've just talked about, and then now you support it, and you happen to be the one then now who's going to do this development. So then the question will arise, how then did you win the tender then to develop this area?
Okay, let me start again by correcting you. Okay, I started by supporting this project. It was in my manifesto twice. So I've never opposed this thing. I opposed the process.
Yeah, for
once
those
the
reasons,
process
sure.
was-
All right.
Okay, but once the process was corrected, then as far as I was concerned, the whole process became legitimate.
Okay.
And Buxton was tendered twice. The first time, some company won this tender and then did not perform. Then they advertised it the second time. It was publicly advertised on the website, in the newspapers. And two companies bid for Buxton. My company bid one, and another company bid also. But the second company did not produce any of the documents required, and consequently, we ended up winning this tender.
Okay.
And I want to point out that it wasn't just Buxton that was on tender. There were 8 different estates on tender. 6 of them, nobody was interested. So it's not like, this is something that everybody's scrambling for. It is only people who had a genuine interest to do something that bid for these contracts.
What would you mean that only people who have genuine interests for these contracts then would bid? Why would somebody who is in real estate development not see the opportunity, for example, to go and participate in any of the other 6 estates if there is going to be some commercial benefit out of it?
Look at the challenges that we're going through right now. Look at the political flack that we're facing. Look at the sensitivity to the whole thing. If it was a private development, you buy a piece of land, you do whatever you want to do, nobody's going to come and question you. But as soon as it becomes a public interest project, then political implications come in, then a lot of political noise starts to emerge. It's a lot more complicated than your normal. Now, for me, this wasn't just a business deal. This was an opportunity to show the people of Mombasa what urban rejuvenation could do and how much value we can introduce into the economy of Mombasa. The biggest challenge we have in Mombasa is that we, as an economy, have literally lost, and we need to find a way to rejuvenate our economy, ourselves. Now, all this noise you're hearing about SGR, the economy of Mombasa, according to Nairobi University study, we've lost 17.4 billion shillings. If Buxton succeeds, it will unlock at least 50 billion into the economy of Mombasa. That's 3 times what we have lost from SGR. And this is just one area, which is housing. Imagine when we start focusing on water, when we start focusing on other infrastructure and other problems that we have in Mombasa. We have the capacity to change our own economy instead of continuously being people who complain. And this is a fast start. Now, every developer who wants to come into this urban rejuvenation is looking at Buxton. Is Buxton going to succeed? If it succeeds, we are unlocking at least 50 million shilling investment into Mombasa.
Mr. Shahbal, I want us to look at the social aspect of housing.
Okay.
Tell us about what you have planned for the current tenants of Buxton.
Okay. The current tenants of Buxton, we are giving them a relocation allowance of 240,000 shillings. We are then placing a deposit of 60,000 on any apartment that they book. And this is being done to encourage them to invest in this thing. Number two, we're giving them first right to acquire apartments in Buxton. Number three, we have negotiated with various banks to make sure that financing is available. So if you, Mugo, want to come and buy an apartment, unless you have a 20% down payment, you can't get this. But the tenants, we've negotiated with the banks that with 10%, they can immediately start booking an apartment. We are also negotiating with the government to see if we can fast track the tenant purchase scheme. But as we speak today, the Kenya Finance Mortgage Corporation has been set up. Yes, the refinance company has been set up. The banks will be getting money at 5%, and they'll be on lending at 9%, which means that for the first time in a long, long time, Kenyans are going to get mortgages that are becoming affordable. Now, let's look at the young people in Mombasa. Many of these young people are either sharing rooms or sharing accommodation or renting bed sitters. A bed sitter in Buxton today will cost you 6,000 shillings a month, which means it is within the range of affordability for most young people in Mombasa. I have thousands of people who want this now. It's an opportunity now for young people to start building equity and to start buying their own property. Instead of paying rent, you're buying your own bed sitter. Hopefully 5 years from today, your income is a bit higher. You upgrade to a first, to one bedroom, and so on and so forth. This is what the Americans call the American dream. Now we're bringing the African dream as well.
We are speaking with the Mombasa businessman and politician Suleiman Shahbal. His company has won the bid and is now rolling out the project of upgrading the Buxton estate. We are discussing the impact of this, and we're also discussing the politics and why, just trying to understand why there is pushback on this particular project. We'll hear some more questions, and of course we have to get deep into this, understanding the politics behind this, understanding the benefits, especially for the current tenants of Buxton, and how other people, other residents of Mombasa and other parts could benefit from this kind of project. And online, our digital platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and www.spicefm.co.ke. Joining us on the line this morning is Mombasa businessman and politician Suleiman Shahbal. We are talking about the Buxton Renewal Project.
Suleiman, as we went to the break, you talked about, looking at youth in Mombasa, younger people now being involved in owning homes and at least being able to, pay this rent of 6,000 shillings, removing them from this place and giving them then all the perks that came along with relocation while this development takes place. And if I can liken it to a situation that happened in Nairobi, whereby the talks of refurbishing in terms of infrastructure areas like Kibera, there was hue and cry. There was a lot of backlash because people were comfortable in their positions, whereby everything they needed they were able to get, in a very small radius, and didn't want to have to spend extra. Do you think you'll be faced with this kind of backlash, or is everything already paved and smooth as you go ahead?
The advantage of comparing what we have and what other people have done, there is nothing that we're doing today that hasn't been done in 20 other countries. So when we designed Buxton, we designed it literally like a mini village. Make sure all the facilities that we want are available there, from social center to a clinic to the small businesses that are going to be there, so that once you are inside Buxton, you literally don't need to leave if you don't have to. And one of the critical things that we learned is that the Buxton project is going to be built by people from Buxton. So we're training the youth of Buxton in plumbing, electrical, masonry, carpentry, security, environmental services. So it's the same youth of Buxton that will be managing and supervising the new Buxton that is coming up. You know, let's not talk about breaking. Let's talk about building a new mini city and a new mini village in Nairobi with all the latest modern amenities. You know, when you look at what happened in Nairobi with Mugoya, Mugoya built a lot of estates and trained a lot of young people. These young people then finished the Mugoya estates and went on to open their own carpentry shop and their own masonry shop. So in a way, Mugoya created a whole new class of trained people who went out and created their own business activities. We want to duplicate that with Buxton. It's not that we're going to bring in a bunch of contractors, they do everything. No, we're giving the opportunities. Even the supply contracts were involving Vijana Buxton.
You talked
So
about...
yes, they will obviously, you know, anything big that anyone tries to do will always face competition. But we must always focus with the end in mind. Is what we're doing, is it going to be for the general good and for the public good, or is this purely another simple commercial project?
You talked about the 524 tenants, the current residents of Buxton, receiving some money, 240,000 shillings, and also 60,000 shillings deposit towards their eventual ownership of the new houses. How did you arrive at the 240,000 shillings, just comparing to what those in Pangani were receiving? Was it 600,000 shillings?
Yes, but
Well, you can't.
Pangani only had 48 tenants.
Yeah, a tenant is a tenant.
Nope. Buxton has 524. If you paid the same amount of money, the thing that you're likely to do is actually raise the cost of that entire enterprise. And it stops being, the aspect of affordable housing can go out of the window with that sort of margin. That is actually just the reality. Mr. Shahbal, please.
Was that the argument?
That's part of the argument, but then also you have to compare the cost of living and the cost of rents in Mombasa and the cost of rents in Nairobi. At the end of the day, these properties are not mine, they belong to the county of Mombasa. So we as developers are simply extending an extra helping hand. And Muga is right, you know, at the end of the day, you want to provide affordable housing. If you end up paying so much more, then it doesn't become affordable anymore. I mean, look at what we're paying on a two-bedroom apartment. It's 300,000. The apartment itself is being sold for 3 million. So 10% already is being paid to the existing tenant before we've even put a nail on the ground. So there has to be a balance. You cannot just be whatever comes into your head. There has to be a balance.
So you've also talked about now this attracting about 50 billion shillings into the economy of Mombasa. Just paint this picture. How is this going to be realized? What is this new estate going to look like? What is this that is going to be worth 50 billion shillings in terms of the economy?
Okay, look at what we're doing in Buxton is roughly 6 billion shillings. Changamwe is approximately 17 billion shillings. Likoni, I believe, is about 15 billion shillings. So already between the three of us, we are almost at 40 billion. And there are 10 other estates that are available for development. So just between the three estates that are now at the proposal stage, we are close to 40 billion. And we know Zizima is also coming on spring. There are a few more others that are also targeting to enter into this thing. But everything depends on whether Buxton succeeds or not. And I'm requesting the politicians of Mombasa, look at the bigger picture. Okay, we need to bring investment into Mombasa. Any project that you start opposing, instead of opposing, first think out, is this in the long run good for the county of Mombasa? And if it has problems, how do we resolve it? It is very easy to stop everything rather than to build.
You're making this request to politicians in Mombasa, so are we to assume that what is the issue then that they would have with this development taking place in the manner in which it's taking place?
As far as I'm concerned, the issue is largely political. Unfortunately, because Suleiman Shahbal is a politician, you know, all eyes are focused on Buxton. I haven't seen anybody talking about the other projects that are in consideration right now. And if you look at the reasons that they're coming up, they're all political reasons. Or there was no public participation. Of course, there's been public participation. There was public participation that the county did when they came up with the whole concept. And the court ruled that there was adequate public participation. Then we did consultation with the residents. Then we did the formal public participation for 3 days. Now, what new issues are they coming up with? They will find some other reasons.
Mr. Shahbal, I want to go back to the mention of the financing that has been made possible by the Kenya Mortgage Finance Refinance Company. You say that they are lending to the banks at 5%. Now,
correct.
Why can the banks not then lend? Because this is a different product, a different project. The whole planning around it is different. Why can they lend at 7%? Why 9%?
Okay, I was talking to the housing finance people, and they told me that from government they're getting 5%. They then have to pay to central bank 1%. So their cost is already starting at 6%. And they need at least another 3% for their operations and their costs and all that. And my guess is, as the kit increases, banks will be forced to become more and more competitive. Housing finance is offering at 9% today. That's what we've negotiated with them. I'm sure that 2 years down the road, other banks will start to sharpen their prices, and the pricing will come down to 7%, or maybe even 6.5%, as we've seen in the United States, because this is literally very cheap money for them.
You know why I ask is because if you look at the percentages we are speaking of, and you look at the amount of money we are speaking of, believe me, any percentage, even if it's 0.5%, is a great deal of money. So
you're right.
Yes. So if someone hikes this thing, and that saving or that amount that I'm speaking of the difference is something that can be passed on then to the tenant.
I'm sure that the housing finance people are listening to you. And right now they're offering at 9%. But give it another 3-4 years when a lot of other banks start to come in and competition increases, even the tenants themselves will start to refinance at lower rates. So I think it's a question of time. This is something new. This is something innovative. I think the government has made a tremendous effort to set this thing up. Let's give it a bit of time. Let's see how it goes.
I think time isn't really on our side when it comes to a project of this nature, given that 2022 is beckoning us the way it is. Let me ask this question. It's a little way off, but let me ask it all the same. A citizen such as yourself, can you have a discussion with the Central Bank of Kenya because they determine these things at the end of the day?
A citizen like me can have a discussion with the central bank because we speak to central bank. Fortunately, as a banker, I do still have relationships with the central bank. But this is not in the purview of the central bank right now. They have given a facility at 5%. They've said 1% charges for us. The rest is market driven.
Mr. Shahbal, you and I both know that when it comes to rates and the things that people charge, the institution in this country that determines this is the central bank. That's why I've asked the question, and you know that's why I've asked it.
Maybe you're trying to corner me in a position where there is no corner here, my friend. Okay.
No, it isn't cornering, Mr. Shahbal. I'm simply saying.
Okay, you're now moving into issues of finance.
Yes, I am.
Today, if you want to borrow long-term dollars or long-term euros on the international market,
yes,
for 15, 20 years, you're unlikely to get anything below 7-8%.
Okay.
So at 5% in shillings is not unreasonable.
Why I ask the question is because if I go by what one has heard as one of the complaints that has been raised, again, it's the amount that is being offered. If you're just talking normally and you're talking about what is available on the market, it's reasonable. It's very, very reasonable. But if the consumer doesn't find it reasonable, then how then can you say it is reasonable?
Let me answer you in a different way.
Yes.
If I was Minister of Finance,
yes,
I would have convinced the President, let us subsidize this housing. And therefore, it becomes a cost to the National Treasury that we are subsidizing these low-income and social housing mortgages.
Yes.
It's a political decision. It's not actually a financial decision. If you look at the financial decision that's been made been made now, based on current market economics, I think it's a reasonable position. Obviously, as a citizen, I would have loved to give and to make available to the public housing at 3-4%. So it's a political decision. Now, next time you get the boss on radio, you ask him that question. Unfortunately, I'm neither the Minister of Finance nor am I the President.
Thank you.
So there's a caller from Buxton who's calling, and he'd like to contribute to this and maybe ask you a question. His name is Saidi Bidu. Saidi, good morning. Good morning, Saidi.
CT, habari ya asubuhi mwalimu.
Si jambo Saidi. Hofu kwako.
Naam. Alhamdulillah, sisi tunashukuru tuko salama huku, na huyo madamu naye vipi ya jambo huko. Sasa mimi comment yangu ya kwanza, wajua iko you use this phrase very many times CP. Unasema government officials, they throw words. And that is what Shahbal is doing right now. He's just throwing words at the whole issue.
Please explain yourself.
I am a resident of Buxton. And to me, I believe that the first thing that they should have done, we should have been on board from the word go. Before, because wanasema kwamba the county government talked to us before the tender or after the tender. We have had no contact or any talks with any person other than the last 3 sessions of what is it called, public participation. That's the only time that we talked to Shahbal and the county. Now, what was the problem there is that these guys have already decided. This is how much we are going to pay you, 240,000. You asked a good question. How did you arrive at that? And of course, he just 3 words at it. How did you arrive at this? If we had sat together, in fact, like we would have decided, said, apana, after you 240 ni mingi, tumpatie 200,000. But we also have needs. This land is government land. Hata sisi tuna haki pia katika ile ardhi. So what is happening right now, on the ground, definitely there's going to be violence after this because we have not been consulted. We do not know what is going on. Just Jana, Juzi, they were issuing notices at night. Imagine. That is what Shahbal is doing.
No, wait a moment. Just hold on a second. Who was knocking? Was it who? You included Shahbal in this discussion, but who was knocking at night?
His people sent the police, with the police. They came at night to give us notices. Now, why do you do this? If it is a genuine thing, I believe we should have been. In fact, unaweka tu meza pale nje na unaambia kila tenant ende akachukue notice yake. But all of us refuse to get the notices. Why? Because it is shady. From the word go, we don't see where this is going to.
Saidi, may I ask you a question, Saidi?
Please do.
You're saying that public participation did not begin from the word go. When is this word go? Because as Suleiman is explaining, he's saying that once they got on board, they have had public participation. And even before public participation, there was a session called consultation. At what point did you expect to have as residents of Buxton, to then engage with the county government? From what point?
Well, when the tender was issued, after the tender was given, we expected the county government to come and sit with us and tell us this is what has happened. We have issued this tender, and this is the developer. So kindly, we what we need is just to talk and let us listen to one another. But he does not want to listen to anybody, Shahbal, because he believes he knows everything. He is Alpha and Omega. He knows the governor. So
Saidi, what you're saying has to be responded to because you're accusing Mr. Shahbal rather strongly.
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Let's hear what Shahbal has to say about this.
Very interesting. You see, Saidi Bidu is one of the members of the committee that is strongly opposed to the Buxton project, and I respect their right to oppose. Now, I'm not a government official. Let's start that. I'm not a government official. I am an individual citizen, just like Said Bidu. And he's saying that there was no public participation done before the county was allowed to go to tender. That's his point of view as an individual. The court, on the other hand, ruled that there was adequate public participation, which then allowed them to continue these discussions. Number two, he's questioning how did this 240,000, how was this figure arrived at? If he had discussed with us, we might even have reduced it. My friend, if the people of Buxton hear you talking like that, watakunyonga. Okay? There are two committees in Buxton. There's a committee that represents the majority. It is led by a gentleman called Sheikh Khalifa. And the committee is almost 20 people. They have, this is the committee that we started initial consultations with. And they negotiated this figure. We were talking of a much lower figure. And they pushed and pushed and pushed until we reached a figure of 300,000. So for him to say that there was no consultation is completely not correct. And number three, he's talking about notices being given at night with police and all that, implying as if people are being forced to move out overnight. No. Notices are being given in the evening because everybody is coming back at work. And notice is basically a letter from the county informing you that this is the compensation you're being offered. You have 3 months, if once you collect your money and once you accept, you have 3 months time to move. Nobody's being forced to move out at night. And finally, Said is saying that, you don't want to talk to us. It's not true. We have offered to meet them. My last offer was to meet them last Sunday. And on the advice of their lawyers, they then declined to meet with us. So I have stated publicly, I respect your position to disagree. That is our democracy. I wanted to meet with them. They declined to meet. Now, if Said is honest, he will admit it here that, yes, I did try and meet with them. We have text messages from them refusing to meet. Now, you cannot talk to somebody who doesn't want to talk.
So, Suleiman, it sounds that like there's what you're calling the majority who are okay with the project so far, and then there's a minority who are not okay with the project. What are you going to do with the minority? And then what is likely to happen if the minority, say, reject this offer, they refuse to move, then what happens?
You know, democracy, and we are a democratic country, takes the interests of the majority first, and the minority shall be heard. The minority shall have their say, but the majority shall have their way. Now, as part of the ESA, we hired a sociologist to go and do a study and do a survey. 85% of the residents of Buxton have already agreed to the project. Another 5 or 6% have been missing. They're not able to be traced. They're either not in their homes or traveling or whatever. There's a 10% that is adamantly opposed to this project. At the end of the day, this property belongs to the county and the people of Mombasa. It is then a decision that the county government has to make. But when Saidi comes here on a public radio show and there'll be violence, what is he inviting? I don't think that is the type of language that responsible citizens should be looking and talking about. We need to look at the greater interest of the people of Mombasa. Yes, there are 545 residents of Buxton. There are 1,800 new residents who want to come in and own their own properties. There are 304 business people who will end up owning shops. Where is the greater interest?
So how do you engage people like Saidi and the political leaders who are opposing this project? How do you engage them as you now gear towards actually breaking ground for the project?
We're talking to them.
Could you give us the timelines of what's expected now to happen between, let's say today, the 23rd of September, until the completion, the day the first tenant should move in?
Okay. Notices have already been circulated. And when we say notices, it's not like you've been given a letter, here's your letter, leave tomorrow. No. It's a notice that you have to go and receive your 240,000 compensation, and immediately there's an offer letter for you to book your apartment, and you have until December 21st, which is exactly 3 months, to make alternative arrangements. And then the project moves on. We're expecting to break ground on the 2nd of January, 2021, and complete and hand over the first apartments within 9 months.
If people refuse to move from the flats, what will happen by that date?
That is a county decision.
Correctly responded to it. True, it is a county decision because it is a partnership with the private developer and the county.
What would you advise the county to do?
In my view, we need to look at the greater interest of the community. Okay, let's start first with the residents of Buxton. Buxton today is completely run down. Anybody who lives in Buxton and who's honest about this will admit, the property should, by all intents and purposes, been condemned years ago. The roofs are leaking, the sewage doesn't work, there's no proper water system, there's absolutely no environmental controls within Buxton. It's time for a change. Now, the vast majority of people of Buxton want to live in modern houses like everybody else. This is an opportunity for the people of Buxton to own their own properties. And you'll find people saying, but we're paying 5,000 shillings or 4,000 shillings. Yes, you're paying 4,000 shillings, but you're paying it to the county government of Mombasa. Here's an opportunity to pay 5,000 shillings and own your own apartment. And if you're buying a 3-bedroom apartment and the rental is the mortgage is 30,000 shillings, you can't afford it, and you're saying, I'm about to retire. My friend, call your children. Okay, everybody chips in and buy a family house that eventually will belong to the whole family. This is how families build wealth. So if you look at the interests of the majority of people in Buxton, in the long run, this is good for them. If you look at the majority of people who will move in. Today, we haven't even started advertising this thing. We have already more than 1,000 applications. Where is the greater interest? This comes back to the whole concept of social housing. At the end of the day, these estates belong to the people of Mombasa, the general people of Mombasa, not the 10, 20 people, the Said Bidus, who believe that they own this property. They don't own this property. It belongs to the people of Mombasa and the county government, not just of Mombasa, but every single city in Mombasa of Kenya have to look at where is the greater good. Look at the jobs that this thing is going to create. Look at the business opportunities this is going to create. It's in the long run, it is the greater general good that everybody has to look at.
Suleiman, we want to thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. And yes, if you look, this is not just a project for Mombasa. It's a project that has been spearheaded by the national government, the urban renewal. It's happening in Nairobi. It's happening in other parts of the country. We hope that the local authorities, that the county governments, are going to approach this in a manner that is going to be for the greater good of the people, and then bringing everybody on board, or at least the vast majority of the people on board, so that everybody then sees the value, present and future value of this project. Asante sana for speaking to us.
Eric, before you go, there's just one closing thing that I want to say. Okay, I am absolutely certain, and I'm absolutely clear in my mind that what we are doing is for the interest and the general benefit of the people of Mombasa. Yes, there's a commercial element to it. Yes, there's a profit element to it. Hii si kazi ya kanisa. But in the long run, the people of Mombasa will benefit from this. And we should not allow politicians to bring petty politics in what the city of Mombasa desperately needs to grow, not only in housing, but in water, in all other problems that we have. This is the way of the future, not continuously complaining. We must take control of our destiny.
Well said.
Thank
Asante
you.
sana.
Thank you very much.
I think it's the first step.
Asante, Mheshimiwa.
Asante sana. Have a great day,
Thank you.
Suleiman Shahbal.
Thank you, all of you. It's, as usual, very nice. I love your studio.
Thank you very much.
You're
You're
for
very
being here.
kind. Thank you.
You'll be welcome, actually, once we deal with these COVID issues. You'll be a
Thank
guest
you.
soon.
Thank
Asante
you.
sana.